What is up, guys? My name is BobaTalks and welcome to a brand new video, and today I'm going to be reviewing Justice League. Now, I don't really know where to properly start with reviews on this channel. I don't know if you've seen one of my previous reviews. I like to talk from the top of my head and just, I don't know, honestly, just hash it out there and just, I don't know, see what flows from my brain, because I feel like that's the most natural way for me. That way as well, I talk about what immediately comes to my mind about what I liked most and then also what I didn't like most. Now, let's just start, I guess, at the beginning. What did I think of the film overall? And then I'll get into, I guess, specific points. So going into Justice League, now this might have a part to do with it, but obviously we all heard about the Rotten Tomatoes, or tomatoes, how you say it, scores before the film was out. I believe it got leaked, but that doesn't always sway my opinion at all. I always say don't listen to critics, especially when it comes to the DCEU, because if we all know this by now, or if you haven't already, it's almost like a thing now to shit on the DCEU, even when the films are good. I mean, granted, there are some problems with some of them, like Suicide Squad, even BVS to a degree, but they shouldn't be shat on as much as they are. Now, I was actually having a discussion with my other comic book YouTubers that I speak to, and I'm sure you know who I'm on about, and we were saying, you know, that with films like Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and stuff like that, I believe they were around 70 to 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Justice League was around 45 or 40 at the time, and we were like, those were like fun films, but flawed in their own ways, yet they're still up at the 70s. But Justice League, as it's another film from DC, it is for some reason, even though it's just as good in its own way, I mean, obviously everyone's opinion is different, it's all the way down at the 40s, where it should at least be 60 and up, I guess. So I admit, I went into the film knowing about this, and obviously I was worried about it anyway, just from all the stuff coming out, where I don't know, sometimes a lot of people do not pay attention to this, so a lot of my friends enjoyed it a lot more than me, because obviously they don't do reviews, or they're not as, you know, I have to be very criticizing, obviously, because I run this YouTube channel, and I can't just look at this film like one of my friends would. You know, it's completely different. So jumping right to the cut, I came out of the film disappointed, as well as, I don't know, underwhelmed. I still thought it was a good film. That's the important thing to focus on here in terms of this review. It was a good film, but it really wasn't great, in my opinion. It wasn't effing great. It really just wasn't for me. It just, there's problems with it, which I'll get into in a second. But honestly, I didn't think I would say this, and I don't necessarily have a massive problem with Batman vs Superman, but I honestly enjoyed that film more than the Justice League film. Now, I will be seeing this film again, so I might do an updated thoughts on it after a second time, but this was my first impression. My eyes were glued to the screen, and maybe that was a part of the problem as well, because also another thing I knew about this film before going in is about the goddamn CGI on Superman. Now, I've had some people agree with me, I've had some people disagree with me, like people I respect, and obviously if you didn't notice it, then that is great. And as I sort of said earlier, some of my friends didn't notice it until I explained it to them, but what they did actually notice is there was something off about Henry Cavill, and he didn't necessarily look real. And one thing for me, every time, or well, not every time, because obviously not every scene with Henry Cavill in it was a reshoot, but every scene which was, I don't know, like 7 out of 10 or something, but I really don't know, that he was in, that was a reshooted scene, I silently said to myself, like, are you freaking serious? And it genuinely annoyed me every time. You might be one of those people who are like, I don't get the problem, yeah, maybe I noticed it a little bit, but apart from that, it was all amazing. All you have to do is look at, you know, just Google Superman or just Justice League, and the general consensus is that that is a huge problem, and it was terrible. And I know this doesn't come across as your typical movie review, because it's not structured in like, oh, let's look at the plot, let's look at this, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know, I feel this way of talking about it is my most honest approach. But that being said, Superman was awesome. Like, I really did enjoy him, but it could have been so much more for me without the goddamn CGI mustache, which got removed, because I get it. The thing is, I get it. Like, there was a reason for it. He had to have it on because he was required to keep it for another movie, but because this film got reshot the shit out of, I was like, it took away from every scene that he was in, And I don't know if it was something to do with budget and they couldn't do it better, but I don't know. So much money was spent on reshoots because Joss Whedon completely took over, and I don't know if the execs didn't like Zack Snyder's original take on it. I've heard early screenings were bad, so maybe that's why there were so many reshoots. But honestly, the amount of reshoots there were, because I noticed it on Henry Cavill, the CGI, so many scenes. So that literally means they reshot so like 3/4 of his scenes, if not more. But I'm going to stop talking about that, otherwise this may as well be called Henry Cavill CGI mustache removal rant. Another thing that I didn't like about Justice League, and yes, I'm talking about the things I don't like first, I guess, is the runtime. They obviously cut so much out of this film. If you look at all the trailers, there's so many deleted scenes that were cut out of this film because they wanted to keep it at 2 hours for some reason, but I seriously think it would have done a lot better if they included some other scenes. But that's my point. I think it would have been incredibly beneficial if this scene was, another 20 minutes long or another 25 or half an hour. It doesn't matter, but longer. Seriously, you could have used it. I wouldn't have cared about it. I think the average person who isn't even into comic books would have liked it a bit more, maybe subconsciously, only in the terms of, because that's the other problem with this film, it felt obviously a bit rushed in terms of the story. But I knew this going in as well. Obviously, when you're introducing quite a few new characters, not including obviously Batman or Wonder Woman, you can only have so much time to introduce them, get onto the main thing, and then, establish everything, and then kick the villain's ass, and then it's over, and blah, blah, blah. I do get how this film is more of a tool to set up, like, these other characters, like the Flash for his solo film, Cyborg, Aquaman, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I don't mind the rushness so much because I actually thought the pacing wasn't so bad. But I guess with the whole 2-hour thing, I felt like it could have been so much more elaborated on. Like Cyborg could have had a lot more scenes. I mean, this is referring to some scenes, obviously, of where it was cut out completely. There were so many Ezra Miller Flash scenes cut out. There was just so much cut out of this film that I just don't understand why they did that. I don't. Another thing that I didn't think was so great in this film, and this combines being rushed as well as CGI and stuff like that. Steppenwolf he was really cool, but obviously he kind of just came out of nowhere. They didn't elaborate enough on his background. He was just shoved in the film, shoved in our faces, and they should have explained so much more about where he came from. Obviously we all know this if you know about the background story, but in this film it was just more just like, well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, but who are you, man? Like, who are you? We may all know because we're comic book nerds, but like, what about everyone else, the average audience? It must feel like to them this is just such a weak villain. And we've seen this in other films before, not just DC, but Marvel films, very big films. The villains are kind of usually underwhelming, but that's how I felt with this film. But at the same time, it wasn't that bad. But let's talk about a few things that I did like in the film. The characters were done absolutely great. The characters were the best part of the film. Obviously, this was a rushed film in terms of how quick it was and how they should have, expanded it out with extra scenes that they removed. But the characters were brilliant. Obviously, we've already seen Batman, we've already seen Wonder Woman and stuff, but we mainly got properly introduced to Aquaman this time. We got Barry Allen, and I'll talk about him in a second. Cyborg was pleasantly surprising to me. Wonder Woman, awesome as always. She felt a little bit different this film, but, that may be down to cinematography and stuff like that, but she didn't feel how she felt like in Wonder Woman. But at the same time, this film has been kind of changed quite a lot in terms of what the original vision for it was for Zack Snyder and then Joss Whedon. So I guess I'll talk about individual characters now. Now, Batman was cool in this movie. I absolutely freaking adored that first scene, the Gotham scene. That was obviously, we all feel like this Batman is kick-ass compared to obviously previous Batmans. I mean, the most popular thing I feel that I've spoken to a lot of people about with Batman vs Superman is the Arkham-styled Batman combat, in addition to just the actual real Dark Knight Gotham feel. They've completely nailed Gotham and the vibe and the tone and, just how Batman's on the gargoyles. It's just, oh my god, as a major Batman fan, that was just, absolute amazingness. I loved it. But a couple of things I didn't like about Batman so much is that they did obviously change him quite a bit in terms of how he was in Batman vs Superman. Also, just as I said earlier, I spoke to another YouTuber today actually, and it felt like we had kind of two different Batmans in this film. Like, we had the Batman from Snyder's original version, and then obviously a load of reshoots came around from Joss Whedon, and there was a bit more comedy in it, obviously, and that's what they wanted to do. And Batman, there was just some times where that happened, and it's just like, no, that's not our Batman, that's not Bruce, that's not what it was like before, and you can see how there's different bits in this film that don't completely go up together like that. Aquaman was cool. I do love Jason Momoa, I always have, but I just didn't think he was all that in this film. I definitely feel like what they did with his character was everything they could have done. Obviously, they concentrated on him a bit more than the others. In terms of, you know, we've got the Aquaman solo movie coming out. So they wanted to set quite a bit up there, but I don't know. I just didn't find, to me personally, he wasn't insanely interesting enough as the other characters, but that is just me. But in terms of a complete neutral kind of analytical view, what they did with his character in the film was, you know, everything they could have done, and it was good. Now let's talk about Mr. Happy Ezra Miller. Now this was the thing I was least excited about when I went into watching this film, ever since we all found out about Ezra Miller. I do love Ezra Miller. I think he's a fantastic actor, but we've all got our Barry Allen from the TV show already, Grant Gustin, and when we saw the trailers for Ezra Miller and stuff like that for Justice League, whether you're talking about the earliest trailers or the latest trailers for the film, I was not only digging the Flash suit, but I was not looking forward to the over-eccentric kind of Barry Allen, but also that's a lot of Ezra Miller as well. That would come with this film. I just felt like that's such different kind of vibes that we get compared to the TV show. And obviously, it's different, I get it. But he was the least looking forward to thing in this film. But honestly, I will say he was one of my favorite parts, if not one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character out of all of them, which I never thought I would say because I'm such a Batman fanboy, but I am such a Flash fanboy. But I never thought I'd say it because it's, you know, I thought he would be so over-eccentric. And even though he is, I don't know, he was really good. I definitely didn't enjoy the very go happy Barry Allen scenes as much as I did in the scenes when he was with his father, Henry Allen. I love that. That stuff was, you know, it was brilliant. And he had such good acting. And, you know, when he was talking to his dad, it was really emotional. And it was just like Flash season 1 and true to the comic book storyline. There's a very raw relationship there. Henry Allen's been put into jail falsely, blah, blah, blah. We all know the story. But that, you know, we got to see, I feel like, a bit deeper into the Barry Allen. Like, not all jokey, all the flipping time. We got to see an emotional Barry Allen, and I loved that. And was it just me? But I felt like the music they used really was kind of paying tribute to the Flash TV show one. I know the TV show one's like really, really fast, but they kind of did it slow. And maybe it's just like a Flash kind of vibe theme, that the kind of music that just goes with him. But I felt like it was really inspired from that. And for a minute, I was like, what? Are they actually ripping this? But then obviously it is different. But I really do feel like the slow-mo scenes when he was going super duper fast and using his powers, that was very reminiscent of the TV show theme when, you know, that is used plenty of times in there. Now, as I kind of said earlier, Cyborg, he was pleasantly surprising because if I'm being honest, I really couldn't have given a crap too much about his character before this, because not only did I not dig the look, you know, I guess maybe it's just you can't translate something like that to screen that well in terms of CGI, but no. I really liked Victor. He was brilliant. I really did. And I know they cut a lot from the film, and that's another, you know, I've already bitched about that. So it would have been amazing to see more of him. This was a complete disinterest for me walking into the film. And when I came out, I was like, wow, Victor was pretty kick-ass, and I want to see more, and I wish there was more. And I don't know if this is true, that they completely changed, like, the sheen on his armor. It was more of like a dark grayish instead of that complete shiny white metal look that they had in the earlier trailers. So I really like that they made it look more real, like if you could touch it and poke it, rather than before I honestly felt like it was like the liquid metal from the old Terminator films and you could just put your hand through it. I completely love the flashback scenes when Wonder Woman was giving a bit of context to Steppenwolf, and we got all those glorious, you know, and that's why I need to see it again. I need to see all that stuff, but I want to see it in slow-mo. Like, we got that tease for the Lantern, Green Lantern, and I was like, oh my god, that was completely unexpected, to be honest. And then we got all the other teasers for, like, you know, the Atlanteans and then the humans and then man and the Amazonians just coming together to fight and to stop the terraforming of Earth becoming like the new apocalypse way back then. And then this film is essentially just that again, but not as epic because we're not as united. In fact, there's only like a couple of heroes stopping this from happening. And to be honest, without Superman, it would have been an extremely different job. The post-credit scenes were absolutely awesome. Don't get me started about Flash racing against Superman. That was just such a fan service. I do think that this is another thing in the film. It did annoy me about the Flash, you know, not having his own superpower, if that makes sense. I feel like Henry Cavill or Superman shouldn't be as fast as the Flash. Now, I don't think that's actually the case in this universe. I mean, obviously, this has always been a debate, but I feel like let the Flash have his superpower. I mean, that's always got right. I mean, yes, we know he can travel back in time, blah, blah, blah. But that moment when, you know, Superman started to move his eyes and then moved his head, that just showed how he's just as fast as the Flash in this film. And now you could argue, and this is what I choose to believe, Barry Allen is basically a baby Flash at the minute in the DCEU. And I bet he is faster. So, like, you know, the more he progresses, he will unlock amazing abilities, and the potential he has is probably just limitless, whereas Superman is just extremely fast, but only as fast as Barry is right now, probably. So maybe that was just a gripe that I can just deal with myself by just saying that, but I don't know. Let me know how you feel about that. And then the Deathstroke scene with Lex Luthor, that was just amazing and sets up all kinds of potential stuff, but I guess we could get into that in another video. But wow, amazing. I was kind of hoping to see the whole Darkseid kind of tease, maybe just even a freaking silhouette, but I feel like with everything that's changing at the minute, and how much this is the problem, as you probably gathered, they've changed so much. They're probably changing their direction with all this. Darkseid might not even be a flipping thing into the future, where that was the original vision. So I don't know. But, you know, I would have liked to have seen that, but maybe that isn't in the plans anymore. So what can I say about this film overall? I enjoyed it. Of course I did. But I had some serious problems in it that I didn't even have walking out of Batman v Superman. Like, I seriously didn't. And that is telling, because obviously you only have to look about how this film is being received as well. And I'm not just talking about the bastard critics who would always shit on it. It is genuinely not being received that amazing. And I always think, and I always oppose that, and I always feel differently normally when I walk out of these films. I always think, well, screw the critics. Who, you know, how are they thinking this? But this is the first time I walked out and I thought to myself, I don't obviously agree with everything said critic is saying, but there are a few points where I'm just like, you know what, that is kind of right. But that said, there was so much awesomeness about this film, and it definitely is flawed, but it doesn't deserve, hell no does it deserve where it's at on Rotten Tomatoes. It deserves to be way up, maybe like at 60, 65, 70%. That is a thing that does annoy me. It did leave me wanting more, but I have to beg the question, is that because they cut so much out of this film? So honestly, if they don't release loads of, you know, extended footage in the Blu-ray release or whatever, then that's going to be a huge mistake, because I feel like this film, just like they said about Batman vs Superman, is going to be making up for it in its DVD Blu-ray release in terms of how much footage and context all that footage will give to the release, where they should have just done that in flipping theaters, man. Like, come on. Am I going to see it again? Of course I am, but this is for the first time where I don't know if it's going to make me like it less or like it more. And I think the emphasis I have to give to this is that I thought it was good, but it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or what I thought it could have been. And that is the problem, I think. And bottom line, I've already said this a couple times, but it does not deserve the hate that it is getting, you know, everywhere. So that is another thing I will say. It is a flipping good film. Miles better than Suicide Squad, who I think personally, that was a good film. You know, obviously had a lot of problems, but it is better than that. But also, to give even more context to how I feel about it, it wasn't as good as Man of Steel, it wasn't as good as Wonder Woman, and it wasn't as good as Batman vs Superman. But it's better than flipping Suicide Squad. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. This was just my honest opinion. Justice League was a kick-ass film, but it just didn't live up to my dreams and what I thought, mainly because it did have a load of problems, whether it's, you know, we're talking about all the cut stuff, all the reshoots, that CGI on Superman's face, the villain and more. But at the same time, the characters were great, the action was pretty awesome, the universe building blocks were great. There's so much stuff that could spiral off from this, and it's really got, I feel like if things go well from here on out, it's really got the DC universe proper pumped and starting for what could be an amazing journey from here on out. But anyway, guys, that is all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like on it, as it really does show your support for the channel. And more importantly, let me know what you thought of Justice League in the comments below. If you want to stay a little bit more up to date with me personally, you can do so by following me on social media. The links will be popping up around here or in the description below. But apart from that, guys, that is all I have to say. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.